Happy to welcome in the host of the Locked On Kings podcast, our man Matt George, who is casually sipping on some McQueen and the Violet Fog gin, which that's his pre-show prep to get ready to talk about the Sacramento Kings. And I thought you sounded awfully relaxed during last night's podcast, and that this explains everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it absolutely does. And I also said on last night's podcast that I watched the entire game or every second of that Toronto game. And at one point during that game, actually, that's not true. I lied because there were about a minute and a half of the game that I missed because my nearly 4-month-old baby vomited on my chin and neck. And it was my favorite part of the game. I got to stand up and I got to take a break and clean vomit off myself. And I had a better time.
Everybody throws up watching these Kings.
It's wild. Yeah.
I bought him courtside seats for his birthday.
There you go. There you go. He'll fit right in. Just vomit down there. Man, what are we doing?
Well, by the way, quick note too. It's now Locked On Stockton Kings because I'm talking about a team that plays hard and a well-coached team. No disrespect to Alvin Gentry. I feel so bad for Alvin. That's actually, I'm sure that's going to be a talking point that we bring up today, but I don't know if you guys heard my follow-up question to Alvin after he, on 2 separate occasions, tried to take ownership for the team not being prepared. And I basically asked him last night, I was like, hey, Alvin, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but you're now the third coach that this team has failed to be prepared for consistently. They have these issues. It's been this core. And I asked him, what more can you and your coaching staff do to prepare this team? He admitted, or he said earlier on that the game plan was for them to play better defensively, get out and transition. And the Kings didn't execute that game plan. So it's one thing if you implement a game plan, and maybe this is what happened with Walton a lot. You implement a game plan and it's not working and you don't adjust. That's on the coach. But if you implement a game plan and the players are executing that game plan, how can you take ownership for that? Your game plan wasn't wrong. You never find out if it's wrong or not because it was never executed in the first place. And his game plan is not elaborate. His game plan is play defense. Just stop somebody. Score. Like that. Alvin Gentry's game plan is like what you'd tell a middle school basketball team at this point in time. And the Kings can't execute that. So I appreciated Gentry's answer. He said, look, the day that a head coach says that there's nothing more that he can do and starts blaming the players he can't be a head coach anymore and he's never going to be that and he's never going to say that. And I appreciate that because you can't in this players driven league, but nobody in their right mind should watch what happened in Toronto, watch what happened during this road trip and gone, yeah, that's on Alvin Gentry. Nobody.
Well, no, not how they played out, but he did do some things that were puzzling. And I'm not blaming it on it, but I mean, the fact that Terrence Davis is just out of this rotation and you're giving these minutes to Buddy Hield, why?
Yeah, what's strange to me about that, Kenny, and I'm glad you brought that up, is when the Kings won, what was it? They won 3 of 4 or something like that. Buddy's minutes were held to, on average, 20 to 21 a game.
Right.
And now that Buddy's minutes have started to come up and Terrence Davis was really hot during that time. Now, granted, the Kings were dealing with some injuries. Harrison Barnes wasn't playing, and we knew that minutes were going to be shaken up. But we all discussed last week, we thought the minutes being shaken up, the minutes were going to come from guys like Chimezie Metu and Buddy Hield, not Terrence Davis, who's been playing so well. So yeah, that's a puzzling decision too. You definitely can talk about Gentry's rotations, and I'm not saying he's blameless by any means, but everybody who's watched Kings basketball over the last 3-4 seasons knows that the bigger problem is this group. And I don't know you put Greg Popovich here in Sacramento, and things are probably better because it's Pop, but I don't know if Pop could save this core at this point in time. This group just does not work, and they're incapable of executing basic fundamental basketball. I don't know what more we need to see to make that untrue.
What's the most glaring thing you see when you watch them play?
Jesus.
If I ask you, if you're ranking, why are the Sacramento Kings in the position that they are? What's the first thing you're putting on the list?
They're weak, mentally and in some cases physically weak. But I look at this team and I just see a weak team. I see a team that falls into the same mistakes game after game after game. I see a team that folds and then attempts to make a comeback, like in the Cleveland situation. Cleveland is another perfect example. It's the same thing with the Phoenix Suns game at home earlier on in the season. It's a perfect example of the Kings really second or almost third unit, playing hard, making the final score look a lot more respectable so that when you look at a box score that you don't get the full story of that game. The Cleveland game was an absolute beatdown. The Phoenix game was an absolute beatdown. And we shouldn't look at it any other way just because Davion Mitchell and Damian Jones had that team within striking distance for a short period of time. Now, no disrespect to them, no discrediting them. I think it shows their quality, how they're willing to stay ready and how they can make positive impacts when they come into the game. The sad part is, though, this team almost relies on that and needs that before. And we've seen that a handful of times this season, that the starters go and sit their ass on the bench, and guys who barely play and make a 10% of what the starters are making come in and save the team or get the team back into it. It's sad, but it's what this team is. So most glaring thing, D'Lo, there's a ton of glaring things, but the most glaring thing to me is that this team seems to make the same mistakes. They don't learn game in and game out. And I have no reason to believe that it's going to change.
You talked about Alvin Gentry stepping to the podium last night and speaking about that game, trying to take responsibility and accountability for the things that went on. Another guy that came to the podium last night, well, there was two guys specifically, but one I'll talk about here, De'Aaron Fox came to the podium. Mm-hmm. And I've said a number of different times today, if I'm going to be hard on De'Aaron Fox for the way that he presented himself and the way that he came to the press conference after the first Raptors game at home when they got beat down by 30 plus with the hood over his head, slouched back, one-word answers. I'm going to acknowledge what I saw last night, which was I felt like he looked a lot more like a leader last night. He stood up. He gave engaging answers. He talked about it. I think he did the same thing on Friday when he missed the free throws. So that doesn't get you wins and losses, but I'll say this. I think that get you some respect in that locker room. When it's going bad, you stand up, you answer, you don't slouch, you don't put the hood over your head, you don't say one or two words. You come out there and you answer it like a leader. And that's what I thought he did yesterday. I see your facial expressions. You don't really think it matters one way or the other.
Yeah, like him going on a 30-second to 45-second answer where he throws in 17 different cuss words during that time. Like, to me, that doesn't suggest leadership. Like, maybe it's a little more engaged than when he was sitting back, like not making eye contact. And leadership. What was? Sorry, say that one more time.
Being engaged and being present for the press conference. That's the leadership.
Yeah, but did De'Aaron Fox say anything last night that if you're a teammate, you're motivated by it? I think De'Aaron Fox, one, made an excuse for this team, and two, I did appreciate his answer when James Ham asked him, like, do you care about winning, right? And Fox called it a stupid question, but not directed at James, directed at like anybody who's questioning my desire to win. That's a stupid question. Like, so I kind of appreciated that answer, although I still need to see it. But the biggest answer that he gave that I guess could be inspirational, which I didn't find inspiring at all, is he goes on this minute-long answer where he's talking about there's a difference between effort and being sharp. And like, I fundamentally disagree with almost everything that he said there, because I question effort with this team on a nightly basis. And it's something as simple as De'Aaron not lifting his hands up, closing out a shooter. I mean, the Charlotte Hornets game, Book Knight, not a good 3-point shooter coming out of college. Book Knight is on one. I don't know what, hit 6 of 8 from 3-point range. His 6th 3-pointer, he got a good look from the wing. De'Aaron Fox closes out on him, and his hands are by his sides. And Fox is not the only one to do this. So, like, I disagree with De'Aaron completely that it's not a question of effort, it's a question of sharpness. No, this team isn't sharp, but the effort is definitely to be questioned nightly from this group as well. The effort of, now De'Aaron's effort has gotten a little bit better, at least offensively. Defensively, it's still a nightmare across the board. But I go back at your question and your comments, Kenny, because I sat in that press conference. I listened to every word that he said, and I couldn't find anything that was motivating. It sounded more like excuse making to me.
It wasn't supposed to be a motivational speech. It's just standing up and talking about where they got to get better. And he didn't do that the first time they got beat down by Toronto, and he did that last night. And when he talked about harder and smarter, like, I agree with you. I think they need to. There's moments when they need to play harder. But what I took away from that was you can run around like a chicken with your head cut off all day. Buddy Hield does that. If you're not sharp, nobody questions whether Buddy plays hard. Like, he plays hard. He goes hard at everything he does. He just doesn't do what you're supposed to do a lot of the times, or what you practice. So that's what he talks about when being sharp. Like, yeah, you go out there, you play hard, you run the floor hard, you come off your screens hard, cool. But if it's not in the flow of the offense, if you're not doing it the same way on the defensive end, or if you're like in the Charlotte game, Buddy Hield goes hard after this perceived loose ball from Miles Bridges, but just leaves Caleb Martin in the corner wide open. Like, yeah, he went hard, but that wasn't smart or sharp to go do that. And that's what I took from De'Aaron Fox more than anything. So it wasn't a motivational speech. It was more so of, this is what's going on. This is what's need to be fixed, in my opinion.
Okay. No, I hear that. And I guess my ultimate takeaway from that is this team is neither plays hard consistently enough or is sharp, period. I think that was my takeaway.
I think you're right about that.
And here, let's hit the pause button for 1 second so you can actually, and everyone can hear what De'Aaron Fox said.
I mean, the thing is, it's not about just like playing hard. You know what I'm saying? It's not too many people in this world that could be a lazy motherfucker and make it to the NBA. You know what I'm saying? Everybody played hard to get here. Everybody plays hard when they're here. It's about, just being sharp, everything that you do. Obviously, with that second group that they had, Toronto, there's no one out there that's just going to go out there and get a bucket. But everything they do is quick, sharp, to the point. They know exactly what they need to do. And they're running to a T. You know what I'm saying? It's not too many teams in this league that are running complicated stuff. It's just not a thing. Most people have a coach from a similar coaching staff and they copy whatever coach that they were under, and everybody's running the same. So when we're out there, it's just about being sharp. Now, if it's a loose ball, 50-50 ball like that, then yeah, it's about playing hard. But when you're out there and, coverages, your coverage ain't about playing hard. Your coverage is about being sharp. So when we're out there running a play, it's not about just, you obviously want to run the play fast and get into your, but it's not about doing the play hard. It's about doing it sharp. So, if the timing is off, that's not about playing hard. That's about being sharp. If we with coverage where you're not supposed to switch and you switch, or vice versa, or whatever it may be, it's not about playing hard. It's about being sharp. You're not giving up 130 because you're not playing hard.
No, that's false. That last sentence was false.
Yeah, he said the playing hard, sharp thing like 5 times. Yeah, he said that several times there.
The last
really trying to drive that home.
You are giving up 130 because you're not consistently playing hard.
So to your point, Kenny, yes, he's more engaged. It's one of the most engaged answers we've gotten out of De'Aaron Fox, but it didn't tell me anything. I didn't learn anything from it. It was just him more pointing out more mistakes that this Kings team has. We know this team doesn't play sharp. I question whether this team is capable of playing hard, and they don't play hard for the entire game. They do have stretches of playing hard. They do have moments. They do have guys who play hard. A lot of times it's those, like I talked about, guys like Davion Mitchell and Damian Jones, when they'll come in and play hard just to get you back in the game. But you can't tell me that you were playing hard or sharp coming out of the gate when you're down 11-0 in the first 4 minutes of the game. You can't hit a shot, and then it takes a 10-0 run for you to get back in. Most teams use a 10-0 run to either, if they're behind, take a small lead, or if they're in the lead, build a comfortable lead. That's what most people do with a 10-0 run in the NBA. You can't rely on the game of runs that is basketball just to get you back into a game on a nightly basis, especially 4 minutes in. Like that doesn't say this team is sharp or hard at all.
Mm-hmm.
And the lead is down to 27 here at Toronto as we head to the fourth quarter here. Don't go anywhere. The Kings are on a 9-0 run. They're down 17. Anything can happen here in the final 4 minutes.
I love Mark Jones because
Mark didn't say any of it. Well, Mark said some of that, not all of it. I embellished some of that, but
he said a couple of times the Kings will be down like
to 27.
Kings will be down like 15 or 20 with like 6 minutes left, and the Kings will get one defensive stop, and he'll go, "Well, Katie, they're going to need a few more of those." A few more of those.
Well, he's right.
Hey, look,
they are.
The Kings might fire me if I was a play-by-play guy. Because I'd be like, who gives a damn? They're down 24.
Well, I'd be on Echo. Y'all could go do something else with your evening. There is no reason for you to stick around here.
And God bless Katie, man. I don't know if she's being encouraged to do this or she generally feels this way, but if there is anyone that, and I love Katie, if there's anybody that pushes if Buddy Hield hits his first shot, it'll get him going narrative more than Katie Christensen. I don't know who it is. And I love her for it because they want so bad. It must be an initiative from the team, because that's what the team wants you to believe, that if Buddy gets going, this team is at their best case scenario. And
I'm pretty confident somebody's monitoring those broadcasts based on some things we saw yesterday. I'm pretty sure the Eagles' eye is out there watching NBC Sports California.
He goes the wrong thing again.
Man, goodness gracious, as usual. So, what's the next move then, Matt? Like, because we can break down games over and over again. We talk about like what do the Kings need to do right now to, I would say, to salvage this season, but the fact is the goal was to play in, right? The goal was the postseason. That's what Monty McNair told us. That's what former head coach Luke Walton told us, that those are the goals. That, like it or not, that goal is still very, very much within reach. So what has to happen now?
See, I push back with that a little bit because, and I've seen people talk about this on social media, the goal was always playoffs, not postseason. So people saying that the Kings,
I don't think so.
No, because I always got the understanding that it was playoffs, not postseason, meaning I don't think it was ever going to be considered a success for this team to make the 10th seed barely and then get knocked out and call that a successful season.
That's because you were listening to D-Lo and KC, and that's what I said. But I'm pretty sure Luke Walton said, "Oh, with the play-in format, we want to take advantage of that." Or maybe it was Monty, maybe it wasn't Luke, but I know play-in was talked about.
Yeah, but I always thought it was going to be, because when I remember asking Luke after last season when he talked about the playoffs, I asked him specifically, "Hey, does it matter how you make it via the play-in, or do you want to be like a top 6 seed? Does that matter with how you accomplish your goal?" And he kind of rolled his eyes at me and said, like, "No, it doesn't matter. Just get in." So at least I got the understanding that from both McNair and Luke Walton, and even Luke's opinion doesn't matter because he's gone. We're talking about the general manager, Monty McNair, here. The goal was always for this team to make the playoffs. Nobody in their right mind could see this version of the Sacramento Kings, maybe with a few changes at the trade deadline, make a 10th seed. There's no way, I have no reason to believe that this team, if they make it a 10th seed, is going to win 2 games in a row. They're capable of it, but I have no reason to believe it's going to happen to actually make the playoffs themselves. I'm not worried about if they finally do make it into the playoffs and get swept in the first round. That don't matter to me. I'm talking about the play-in specifically. Like, if this team makes a 10 seed, then is knocked out by the 9th seed in one game on the road, okay, like that's not a successful season to me. If anything, you're right back in purgatory, and that doesn't count for me as breaking a playoff streak. I don't know if by technicality it would break the postseason streak if the Kings want to spin it that way. I sure as hell am not going to on Locked On Kings. Like, that's still a failure of a season to me. So, in a long-winded way to answer.
Salty today.
I am salty. I need more drink.
Well, look, I'll ask this question though, Matt. If that's a failure of a season, then what were your expectations? Did you expect them before game 1 of the season to be in the playoffs?
Yes.
Expect them. Okay.
Yes. My goal for this team was to be in the playoffs, or everything else was a failure.
Not what you wanted. What did you expect from this team? When they talk about what do you think their record is going to be? Because what we want and what you expect are two different things. I want the 49ers to make the Super Bowl. I don't expect them to make the Super Bowl.
Casey, I want the Kings to win a freaking championship. I don't expect the Kings to win a championship. What I expected was what Monty McNair preached and what Luke Walton preached, which was making the playoffs, getting to the postseason. And I don't consider the locked or the play-in, being eliminated in the play-in, as making the postseason. It was always about playoffs with this team. It was about ending the streak. This team is talented enough to make the freaking playoffs in the Western Conference if they're capable of playing together, which now we see they're not. Like, that's what I expected with this team, and anything else was going to be a failure. And I said at the day 1 of the season, hell, I said 2 weeks before the season started, I was not going to adjust that bar at any point over the course of the season. If the Kings decide to tank and blow everything up and sell at the deadline, which they're not going to do, but if they decide to do that route, that doesn't make me say, okay, now the bar is changed and now the optics have changed and getting the best pick possible means success for this team. Hell no. The bar was always make the playoffs or it's a complete failure, and I'm not budging off that, and I haven't budged off that at any point over the course of this season. I don't think the team deserves to be budged off that. D'Lo, going back to your question, what can the Kings do right now? There's nothing that the players or coaches can do, in my opinion. We've seen what they're capable of doing. I don't give a damn about a players-only meeting. Nothing's going to change. They're going to talk, and they're going to come out and do the same exact thing that they always do, which is fold when they get punched in the mouth. So the only person that can save this team is Monty McNair. And if I'm Monty McNair, even though it's not the 15th yet, and I can't trade everybody yet, even though I think you just talked about the players that like Terrence Davis and Alex Len and Tristan Thompson who become available for trade, that doesn't really change too much. But I'm on the phone with Boston right now. I'm hounding them about Jaylen Brown. I am constantly calling about Jaylen Brown, bugging Brad Stevens, and I'm including Fox in that conversation or Tyrese Halliburton in that conversation. Not both, but one of the two of them without hesitation. I don't understand Jason Anderson's report, if that is true. I'm definitely calling about Domantas Sabonis. Miles Turner doesn't move the needle for me. I'm not the biggest fan of Ben Simmons, but I'm calling about him. Monty McNair needs to swing for the fences. What does this team have to lose? Missing the playoffs again? Great. Setting this team back a couple years? Who cares? Like, if Monty doesn't make a move now, this trade deadline, I think, determines his job. I hope he doesn't lose his job if the Kings don't make the playoffs, because I think that would be absurd, and everybody would know the problem is still here in Sacramento, which is ownership, not Monty McNair. But Monty is the only person that can save this season, in my opinion. I did a whole podcast recently devoted to that. Be on the phone, look for that all-in move. You have to make a decision. There's no more fence sitting. Either make an all-in move, and you have to trade talent to get talent. That means Fox, Halliburton, Mitchell, Barnes, all these guys are available in conversations. You're not trying to just sell them for nothing. Or you do sell them for nothing. You try and acquire draft picks. And you completely tank, which I absolutely hate that route. But make a decision. No more of this fence sitting crap, because this Kings team is going to continue to be in the same bad spot that they're going to be in. And in terms of like draft picks and future assets, if I'm Monty McNair, I'm including draft picks in conversations like they're gifts on the Oprah Winfrey show. I'm tossing them out everywhere. Like, yeah, first round, unprotected or protected. Absolutely. We can consider this. Like, the Kings I don't care about draft picks going forward. And that's one of the most valuable assets that this Kings team has, because they're almost guaranteed to be lottery picks. Like, use those, go all in, try for a swing for the fences move. If it fails, he's out of the job. It sets the Kings back, but who cares? This team's been garbage for over a decade and a half. Like, make a move, try something. That's the only thing this team really hasn't done.
I was going to say, if this was a different show, I think I'd have to say rack 'em or something like that.
I'm sweating. Why am I sweating?
Well, you're passionate. I'm getting text messages from people about that rant you just went on. Pour some more McQueen in that red cup, buddy. I mean, you didn't say anything wrong right there. Like, we're I agree with everything you said. So I'll ask you this: they have an interesting few weeks ahead. They don't leave California till January 7th, or they likely leave the 6th. They don't play outside of California till January 7th. They have a ton of home games.
Mm-hmm.
Is that good or bad? Like, is them turning things around strictly predicated on a deal being made? Like, what do you think the next 3 weeks look like for the Kings?
Well, to part of your question, yes, I think them turning around is completely predicated on them making a move. Now, the good news is, because the West is so bad, that McNair doesn't have to make a move tomorrow. Like, I think this Kings team could finish out this month of December, even get through partial of January, maybe make it to the trade deadline and still be in the mix to actually make the play in. Because I still think, like, best case scenario, this Kings team is able to make the playoffs through the play-in. They're not going to be a top 6 seed. It's not going to happen. So if you can stay where you're at within a game or two, make the improvements, firmly put yourself in the play-in, and then actually look like you belong there and are capable of winning a couple of games to get into the playoffs themselves, that's completely different from where the Kings are right now. But yeah, there are more home games this month. That's neat. This Kings team is worse at home than they've been on the road, and they just got their ass kicked in 3 straight games, with the exception of the Charlotte game, but Charlotte was missing 7 freaking role players. Yeah, like, okay, you're going to be home. You're going to be in a half-empty building because a lot of people don't care. Like, I made the joke last night, but it's kind of not a joke. Like, getting Kings tickets for Christmas is basically coal this year. Like, people don't want to go and invest their money to watch this product that's been made adamantly or very, very clear. And that's not just home Kings fans. That's road Lakers fans weren't even coming to the building on a weeknight to watch their team play. So, like, there is a ton of opportunity if this team is going to salvage anything and is actually going to make a change after a players only meeting. This is the perfect opportunity to do it with winnable games in your building. Do I believe anything's going to be different? No reason to believe it.
I feel you on that. I mean, there's no reason, like you just said, to believe that anything would be any different with this group. And that's why you say he doesn't have to make a move right now. Yes, he does. Like, I don't want to see these guys together anymore. How about that? I don't want to see these guys together anymore. And I can't imagine waiting until later into the season or the trade deadline to do something. Been saying this team's been dying for 3 weeks. And Monty McNair's been sitting on his hands, waiting for value and all this other stuff, while the team is just hemorrhaging blood left and right. And no, this is a perfect time to move on from somebody. You've had 10 games with Alvin Gentry. Nothing's the same. You're getting worse on the defensive end. Move one of these guys ASAP. Buddy, Bagley, both of them. Hell, if the deal is right, I wouldn't be opposed to moving Harrison Barnes at this point. But you can't keep these guys together.
So I agree with you, Kenny, but you also have to have two to tango type thing, which is why I said the only thing Monty can do is be on the phone right now and calling and constantly bugging these guys and trying to be aggressive and make a deal. The other team still has to agree to it. And I still feel like I still get this feeling. I've talked to James Ham about this too. I wonder if he's brought it up on your show. Like, it still feels like everybody's kind of waiting to see what happens in Philly with Ben Simmons. And I don't know if that opens the floodgates. I think we talked about this last week too. Now that may have shifted to Portland with Dame and CJ. That might open the floodgates. It feels like everybody's just kind of waiting. And then once it happens, we're just going to get a barrage, especially now with Indiana making their way into the fray as sellers, and there being 4 potential big names available there. So, but Monty, what he can't afford to do, to your point, Casey, he can't afford to wait. He can't afford to say, I'm not picking up the phone and calling Brad until either one, I hear a rumor of another team going after the guy I want, which should be Jaylen Brown. Like, Jaylen Brown makes so much freaking sense for this team. Jaylen Brown is almost everything that you've asked for this team. Like, as soon as I read, I was even talking about the Kings going after Jaylen Brown before that report came out that Boston is going to break up that Tatum Brown duo. Like, I've loved the idea of Jaylen Brown in Sacramento for years.
By the way, I need to say this. Wasn't that a Bleacher Report?
Was it? It might have been.
I think so. I just feel the need to point that out because, well,
yes,
we all know why.
Understood.
So I just wanted to point that out.
Regardless, even if you take that report out of it, Boston has been.
There's enough there to believe that there could be. Yeah.
Boston has been a failure. They're disappointing. They're locked up in terms of finances, and if they're going to make a change, they're going to have to build around one of those two guys. And I think we all agree that guy's going to be Tatum, right?
Yep.
So if they choose Tatum over Jaylen Brown, Monty, swoop, and I'm sure they would love the idea of a Tyrese Halliburton or De'Aaron Fox there. Now, I'm always going to be hesitant to say I want to trade one of those guys or include one of those guys in a package because I do believe they can work here in Sacramento. But like I said in the rant, you got to trade talent to get talent. You're not going to get talent that's going to make a difference here in Sacramento for Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley, and a first-round pick. You might be able to swing Sabonis for that, but you're going to probably have to include a lot of first-round picks to get that deal done. If you want to get a player that's actually going to make a difference here in Sacramento, you need to trade valuable players, which means Fox, Barnes, Halliburton, and Davion Mitchell all available in conversations.
I want to mention James Harden just went into COVID protocols. So did Bruce Brown at 7 Brooklyn Nets.
I know you guys have an opinion on this. At what point does the NBA consider taking a break? Can they do that? They can't do that. They have to power through.
Nope.
Yeah.
Yep. There'll be game postponements like there were last year, but there will be no pause. There will be no shutdown. There'll be no, that's not happening again.
Yeah. They definitely gonna stay pushing there.
Yeah. They lived through that before, and they're not going to do it again. It's
not just player and coach on coach contact too. I mean, we talked about the whole thing that basically canceled or postponed the Kings Pelicans game when this all started, which was officiating crews bouncing from game to game and city to city too. They are directly involved in that. So even if the Kings don't play the Chicago Bulls, but they get an official that officiated a Bulls game, suddenly it's here in Sacramento. I mean, we got a ticking time bomb here. I hope the NBA powers through and all this can go away, but that seems like wishful thinking.
It's adorable. You're worried about the NBA. We've got a ticking time bomb in this country. This is life. This is how we're going to see each other from ever right here on this live stream. This is how we're going to do it.
Come to think of it, though, if the Kings games are postponed, they can't lose. So,
well, we did have a theory. If the Chicago Bulls had the Kings on the schedule, the NBA would have let them play.
And they would have won by 30.
It would have just been recent events have decided we're going to forego some of these COVID protocols and just let these 6 guys play against the Kings and see how it goes.
Alex Caruso goes for 75, and the Kings give up 80 points in the first half. Perfect.
81.
Sorry,
in the first
81.
Half.
You're right.
81 in the first half.
Unbelievable. It's just ridiculous.
Boy, you are hot today, man. I'm with it. I like fiery Matt George.
I'm physically hot too. I'm dripping right now.
Yeah, that's
like Patrick Ewing over there.
Matt George over there at the free throw line in the fourth quarter.
Hey,
buddy.
I feel like Kenny Thomas on a pregame show.
Well, better than Kenny Thomas on the post-game show yesterday. Would have had to reel him in. Like, hey, Kenny, take it easy, buddy. All right, so we don't know how to fix it. We've identified the problems, and I think you kind of alluded to this a second ago, Matt. Or you didn't allude to it. You flat out said it, and this has been my concern all day. Is okay. You've had a players-only meeting. You came out there and you tried to be passionate. My man Kamara said De'Aaron didn't do nothing but throw out a word salad. There was no substance to what he just said, and like, okay, that's fine. But you've allowed it to be out there now. It's all out there. What's the excuse if you come out flat against Washington? What's the excuse if you get blown out by the Wizards? Like you have no fallback now. You've acknowledged it all publicly. It's out there, and you've got a game to play on your home arena tomorrow that's likely to be very empty, and it's all out there in the public.
That's why I appreciate Harrison Barnes so much, because the amount of times that Harrison's been thrown to the wolves after bad losses like this, and he even mentioned that last night. He said, like, I've talked to you guys after bad losses, or only after bad losses, it seems. Like he knows, and he's tired of it too, but he doesn't take the podium and try to make excuses. And I'm not saying other guys do necessarily, but Harrison takes the podium and goes, I know I sound like a broken record. We need to do this. We need to do that. We need to do this. We're still not doing it. Okay, bye. Like, that's basically that's what I appreciate about HB. To me, there are no excuses for this team. Now, the players and coaches can try and fabricate them and come up with them. Hell, I'll try and come up with them on the Locked On Kings podcast just to give me something to do during a game. But Harrison Barnes is not going to mince words. And it sounds like that was the whole point of this players-only meeting, that behind closed doors, excuses weren't going to be made. Like, the calling out needs to happen, and accountability needs to happen. But like we've already talked about, I don't believe it's going to make any inkling of a difference over the grand scheme of things. Now, maybe they rattle off a win or two and we start to feel a little bit better about this team, but we've also seen them just recently go on a 3-game win streak and then go on the road and look absolutely terrible and look like nothing's been fixed. So I guess the answer to your question, D'Lo, is there is no excuse left for this team. The only excuse that this team could have is everybody getting COVID or getting hurt, which, knock on wood, we don't want any of that to happen, of course. But Rashawn Holmes being out isn't an excuse to me, because you've been able to win without him. And I love Rashawn. He's a very important piece of this team, but you should be able to overcome that. Rashawn Holmes is not a superstar. Rashawn Holmes is not an all-star. He's a damn good player, and I love him, but he's not that. I saw or heard one of your callers talking about the difference of Tyrese Halliburton's numbers when Rashawn Holmes is in the game and out the game. That's awesome, because we know that Tyrese and Rashawn play very well off each other. If Tyrese is as good as we expect him to be, that can't happen. Like, Tyrese cannot disappear when Rashawn Holmes is not playing. Your career cannot be completely dependent upon the big man that you play with. Like, that can't happen if you're going to be the second best or maybe even best player that the team chooses to build around if they decide to trade away De'Aaron Fox. Like, that just can't happen. So, yeah.
The 3 games that they won last week against the Clippers twice and against the Magic. I mean, it was against the Magic. Those 3 games were the 3 fewest minutes Buddy Hield has played all year and the 3 fewest shot attempts he's had all year. I don't think it's a coincidence.
Not at all.
I'm not saying it's his fault, but I don't think it's all his fault, I should say. But I don't think that's a coincidence. And for whatever reason, Alvin Gentry went away from that. Just went away from it. They hadn't won since. He's back to playing 27, 30 minutes a night, all this other stuff. And I don't understand what the reasoning is behind those moves. And maybe,
especially with the way Terrence was playing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Terrence Davis was playing well for you. And you make that decision to go that way. So if things are going to turn around, I'm not going to even say 0 minutes. I'll have a heart today, even though there's an argument to be made for 0 minutes, but you got to reel him back in. Like, it's got to be, hey, you got about 5 or 6, 7 shots max. You go over that number, you're coming out.
See, this is where conspiracy theory, Matt, comes out, and I don't necessarily like it, because it feels like I'm grasping for straws. But like, to me, it doesn't make sense. You're trying to showcase Buddy Hield so his value increases. Every general manager around the NBA knows exactly what Buddy Hield is. Like, they know what Buddy Hield is. That's why the Lakers ended up choosing Russell Westbrook and making the wrong decision and taking Russell Westbrook over Buddy Hield. So, no. And then,
well, they're in a better place than where Buddy Hield. Like, Buddy Hield ain't doing nothing. Lakers 15-13.
I think Buddy Hield would have actually done something on that team because he would have been, I think, reeled in on that team. But I could be wrong. I could be exactly wrong. And by doing something, I mean
shots here.
But by reeled in or by doing something, I think I mean like averaging 13 points a game, maybe 15 points a game.
Ain't no way.
Oh, good.
Okay, fine.
You were having such a good day.
Buddy's terrible. Buddy is not going to be traded to anybody. He's a 2 points per game player on 3 minutes a game.
I ain't say that, but he ain't 15. Is that for damn sure?
I think he could have fit
well. Not on that.
He's getting 15 right now with like 17 shots a night. He ain't getting 17 shots with the Lakers.
All right, don't yell at me. Leave me alone. All right, I'm trying to make a point here. Damn it. Number 2 is the conspiracy theory that I've always fallen back into, and I hate it because there's no fact behind it. It's all just rumor and speculation. But we know that Vivek Ranadive loves Buddy. We know Vivek Ranadive wanted Buddy Hield. And we know that Vivek has instituted his impulses, his desires in this team in the past. Again, I have nothing of fact to say that this is what's going on. All I can do is try and connect the dots and say, how does this make sense? How does it make sense that Alvin Gentry makes the right decisions with Buddy Hield and playing time and the Kings are winning and then just goes away from it out of the blue? Matchups doesn't make sense. The only thing that makes sense to me is someone told him to play.
It's the only thing that makes sense.
I just can't believe that.
It's hard to believe.
I agree.
He was nearly traded, like very publicly. Like I don't know. You're right. That's conspiracy theory.
I agree, but it's like it's trying to connect the dots, and that's the thing with this team.
Matt,
things don't make sense.
Matt, we've got to go.
Okay.
So we've got to end the show. You sounded like he was about to go for another 2 minutes. You was on fire today, Matt.
I'm good.
You're today's MVP for sure. Yes, indeed. Maddie McQueen is my new favorite Matt George. That is for sure. Maddie McQueen.
Oh my God.
Oh wow, he's going out the bottle. Okay. That is a surefire sign that this show needs to